This portion of the John Fredericks Show is brought to you by Hargrave Military Academy. Attend an educational and informative open house event at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia. For more information, visit online at hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Academy. Build his future.
Joining us now is Ken McKay, special treat. He's the current political director of the Republican Governors Association. You know, Ken served as campaign manager for a number of gubernatorial candidates, one being Rhode Island Governor Don Carcieri, and he was successful in that. Ken also was the chief of staff at the Republican National Committee, so he's done his RNC duty, and he's also been involved with Bob McDonnell's successful campaign in 2009, and New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. This guy's been around the block. Also been a strategist on Florida Governor Rick Scott's 210 campaign. So he's guy's like a winner. And also he served as a senior advisor to Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. This guy's got pedigree and credentials. And he also served 3 years in the military, United States Army. Ken, great to have you with us.
Hey, great to be here, John.
Ken, I was excited to have you on today because you guys are releasing some stuff that's really, I got a glimpse of it, and I got to say, I laughed my tail off. Can you share with our audience what you guys are trying to do? Because it's really creative and very funny.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to share it, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. First, though, I got to remind myself to clip the intro you just gave me. You made me sound pretty good.
I'm going to send it to you.
I got to play that for my wife a couple of times.
You need, especially when things get a little antsy.
Yeah, that's right. So what we're doing is, this race is important in Virginia, not only for Virginians but nationwide. We can't afford to have a guy like McAuliffe win statewide election, and we're doing everything we can. This is so important, not only for the Republican Governors Association, but for the party,
right?
Because he's just not up to it, and we, if we're losing to him, it's going to put make a lot of faces sour, and it's going to give a lot of pep to a lot of Democrats who really shouldn't be feeling very good about their record. But in any event, what's been so frustrating is the amount of opposition research on this guy. He has just a rich history of misleading people and being frankly shady. Mm-hmm. And so we were, you can only afford to run so many commercials, and unions are behind him, and they're pouring money into Virginia to pay for the ads that he's running. And so we were sitting around, got a little frustrated, and we're like, how can we get people to understand who this guy really is? Mm-hmm. And we came up with the idea, well, there's so many stories out there, you really need an app. You know what I mean? You need an app for that to keep this guy's story straight. So we started a website, liepadbymac.com, LIEPAD by Mac, M-A-C-K, liepadbymac.com. And it's a place you can go and just watch clips of this guy say things that simply aren't so. I mean, I'll give you a few examples. He first of all, we start the thing with a video about his green tech, the green card thing that he started, because that's such a glaring example, and it's the most recent example of his, behavior. But there's a number of other, he said that he doesn't want the government in his business. All his deals are done with private money, including the one I'm doing now, the car company.
Yeah, right.
And, then he goes out and says, well, Virginia doesn't bid on these things for some reason, but Mississippi gave us more. Well, you just said you didn't do business. You know what I mean? You just said you didn't want government in your business, but you admitted that you're out shopping for incentives. And by the way, you lied to Mississippi. You never built the thing. and he's got, there's no one ever bailed out Terry McAuliffe, he said at one point, but that's not true. There was an SNL that he was involved with down in Florida, and he was involved in Global Crossing, a company up in Rochester, New York, where he made $18 million, and everybody lost money. The pensions were gone for people. So you did get bailed out by the people who spent their lives building that company.
I mean, look, you got to, I'm going to tell my audience, and I don't care if you're conservative, liberal, you're for McAuliffe, you're undecided, or you're for Cuccinelli. This thing is positively hilarious. I got a glimpse of it earlier today when I first got in at 5 a.m., about 4:30, before Kenny Johns was here or anybody. And I was preparing for the show, and I had a cup of I laughed. I spilt my coffee all over myself laughing at it. You got to go to this thing. It's just go to it's a live pad by Mac. It's www.rga.org/livepad, or just go to livepad by Mac. And you go across the screen. First of all, the video is hilarious, and it's got Terry's live pad, Terry's live tunes, and Terry's live book. And it's print, radio, and TV, and the thing is absolutely hilarious. You know, Ken, if there's one thing that I love, you cover politics, it gets dry, and all these negative ads. I mean, this thing is you have done this in such a way that's so creative and so funny, but it's pretty impactful.
You got to cut through. Stuff. You have to, they are pouring cash onto TV, and they're going to outspend us. And so, we're doing whatever we can to get the truth out about Terry and let people know, look, this is not who, he is not who he says he is. And if you look into his background, you'll see it. This guy has no interest in actually being the chief executive of a state. This is all politics. And he's just not, as I said, he's not who he says he is. He's, look, I'll give you for instance, and this is a little touchy, but, yesterday there was a big hullabaloo about somebody made a joke at one of these events.
Right.
And, the campaign was all up in arms about it.
John Whitbeck at one of the events, the Mark Levin, I think, event last night. Now, John Whitbeck is the guy that he actually nominated Cuccinelli at the Republican nominating convention on May 18th, and he made what some people could construe as an anti-Semitic comment, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I'm not defending his joke or anything else. That's not my point. But my point is that this is how campaigns work. They hear something that's touchy, and then they call all the reporters they can and drive the story and get something out there that's bad news. And they say, see this. It has nothing to do with Ken Cuccinelli. Mm-hmm. Ken Cuccinelli didn't say it. Mm-hmm. It couldn't be further from relevancy. But if you really want to know who this guy is, in his book, so this guy wrote a book called "What a Party,"
right?
And then he
McAuliffe.
He narrated it. So there's about 18 hours or something of him to tape, reading his own book. And one of the chapters in the thing, he talks about meeting two Middle Eastern businessmen.
Mm-hmm.
One guy's name was like Hani Marsi, who set up a private dinner with him and Arafat, mm-hmm. where Arafat kissed him on the mouth and rubbed his leg under the table. Mm-hmm. And then he set up private meetings with Arafat behind Israel's back at Camp David at the end of the Clinton administration. Mm-hmm. He called Bill Clinton personally and got Bill Clinton to meet with with Arafat privately mm-hmm. when they were having these talks. So, what's more offensive? Somebody telling a joke, or this guy's record of being just a huckster and exerting political influence for absolutely anybody who will pay or befriend him or whatever. I don't know if he got paid for that by the PLO or whatever, but,
well, look,
whatever he did it for whatever reason he did it for. That's what this is about. Nothing.
Right.
Everything they say is just a little bit shady. He told a group of Vietnamese people, "I was an ambassador in Korea." Well, look. If somebody buys me a Whopper, that doesn't make me the king. You know what I mean? He went to Korea. He raised private money. He didn't take any money from the government. From a guy who had troubles with the Korean government, right. and got himself conferred the ambassador to some trade show. What he says never quite works out. You know what I mean? It's always just a little bit shady. So we need to get it out there, and this was a fun way to do it.
No, it's absolutely a brilliant way to do it because it's very funny and it's done in good taste. That's the other thing. When you're able to bring up or address somebody's negatives in politics and do it in a way that's not mean but just funny, I think that is super effective. I was trying to think back today of some other cases in that. It kind of reminded me of, remember the George Bush for president one ad against Dukakis where he was riding around in the tank with the hat on. Remember that?
Yeah, the helmet one. Yeah, that was a good one.
I mean, they didn't say anything, and it was just funny. I mean, just seeing him going around with the little tank helmet, and it was so little as it is, and I mean, it's just like, do you really want this guy as your commander-in-chief? It was a pretty funny ad. We're with Ken McKay. He's the current political director of the Republican Governors Association. Ken is working with the RGA on trying to help the Cuccinelli for governor campaign win Virginia. Now, Ken, we only got a couple of minutes, but some good news for the Cuccinelli campaign that just came out. New Quinnipiac poll, I put it up on my Facebook page, released overnight, showing the gap closing a little bit. It's about 3 now, according to that. So within the margin of error, or right on the edge of it. Also shows the Libertarian Sarvis at 7%. I don't think that's going to hold. The bad news, though, is Cuccinelli's negatives, according to this poll, unfavorable, still at 51%. It's hard to win when you got your unfavorable at 51%. What are you guys going to do to help him get that down?
Well, I think that that has nothing to do with who Ken Cuccinelli actually is, and everything to do with the amount of money that labor and people who want taxpayer dollars in their pocket have spent against him, trying to define him. And so I think what they're missing here is a little bit of humility. You have to give the voter credit. They are going to have a giant, collective, statewide, queasy feeling about voting for Terry McAuliffe. And right now you're asking people, so what's your impression? I don't know, I'm kind of negative. Well, that's because you're seeing ads all over the place. But when it comes down to, okay, I'm going to the polls, and I'm going to pull a lever, they are going to be very uneasy about a guy with a past like Terry McAuliffe. See, this guy is a huckster. I think I think the New York Times once referred to him as a carnival barker. I know it was one of the papers. Like that's what he is. He's not an executive. And Ken Cuccinelli has spent, his life working for Virginians, his professional career. I don't know if you saw the story about the botched endorsement by the tech committee up in Northern Virginia.
Well, yeah. I mean, look. One of the things he said in the meeting, which say what you want about the guy. I mean, you think he's a pretty good politician because he's been around it forever, and he's raised an astonishing amount of money, Ken. But to sit in front of that group, now you got to think about who was sitting on that pack making this decision. I mean, this is a group of high-powered CEOs that have been very successful in starting and running businesses, and they do that by getting to the facts and understanding what's going on. So he says, I'm not going to read every bill when I'm governor. I'm going to hire people to read them for me. Sounds like Obamacare.
Right.
And then one board member that didn't want to be identified said, this is astonishing statement. I like fell off my chair. I mean, do I want a guy to be governor that's just saying, off the cuff, hey, I got no interest in it. I'm not going to read this stuff. I'll just hire people. They'll tell me what it is. And, I'll be up in D.C. or I'll be campaigning for Mrs. Clinton. I've got other things to do but to bother myself with the legislation that impacts everyday Virginians. I mean, that's basically what he said, right?
Yeah. And by the way, he said, and more outrageous things than that. Well, first of all, with respect to Obamacare, this is a guy who compared Obama. My assistant Kelly pointed this out to me. She looked at the website and said, "This is a good one." He compared Obama and Obamacare to Moses carrying the tablets down. Okay, this guy loves big government and loves big government solutions. And so, and just like Obama, he didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like Obama didn't do the bill. He passed it off to Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, give me a bill. If you remember, he completely failed on leadership. And that's what this guy will do. It will be all words and no substance. And then he said before the same group something to the effect of, when they asked him, well, how will you get things done? And he said, well, I'm Irish, and I'll take guys out for beers until we work it all out. This is a group of substantive guys.
Yeah,
and women. I'm sorry, but substantive people.
right.
and that's the best you got. And then when they don't endorse him, he throws a political fit and has Senator Warner and everybody else call in there and try to stop the endorsement. He completely botched it. He's not. I don't think he's used to being challenged, to be honest with you.
Well, look, the guy's made billions of dollars, always tied into some kind of a government funding for this or that, and I respect his fundraising ability. The guy's a prolific fundraiser, might be the best fundraiser in life history, other than Obama. But, I don't think that gives him the qualifications to be governor. Hey, Ken, we're out of time. I want you to give that website out again.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's www.liepadbymac, L-I-E, liepadbymac, M-A-C-K.com. LiePad by Mac. It's awesome.
Right. Go to LiePad by Mac. You're going to laugh your tail off.